December 7th, 1941. 07:48 a.m. Pearl Harbor, Oahu. The water is unnaturally calm. Battleship Row lies quiet under a pale Hawaiian sky, the kind of morning sailors remember for the rest of their lives, because nothing feels wrong yet. A few men lean against railings. Others sip coffee still steaming in tin cups. Somewhere, a band is packing up instruments after early colors. Then, a scream cuts through the air. Not human, metal. You look up just in time to see the first aircraft break through the clouds, low, fast, painted in pale gray. A red sun flashes on its wings. The first bomb hits the USS Arizona. The harbor erupts. Fire punches skyward. Steel tears open like paper. Men are thrown into the water, burning before they hit the surface. The shockwave rattles windows miles away. In less than 2 minutes, Pearl Harbor is no longer a naval base. It's an execution ground. 7,000 miles away, the other side of the moment. At almost the exact same time, across the Pacific, across cultures, across destiny, Tokyo, Imperial General Headquarters. Inside a polished conference room, senior officers of the Imperial Naval History stand in silence. No cheering, no celebration, just rigid posture and disciplined calm. A naval aide steps forward and bows. Pearl Harbor attack. Successful. For a brief moment, no one speaks. Then, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, exhales slowly. His face betrays nothing, but inside, something heavy settles. He knows what this means. And more importantly, he knows what it doesn't. But around him, many others feel something else entirely. Relief, confidence, even certainty. Because for years, Japanese admirals had believed one thing with almost religious conviction. America would break. Not immediately, not without noise, but inevitably. The belief that made war seem winnable. To understand why Japanese naval leadership felt so sure, so dangerously sure, you have to step inside their worldview. In 1941, Japan is not a reckless nation lunging blindly into war. It is a calculating empire shaped by victories against China and Russia, hardened by decades of expansion, and guided by a belief that willpower decides wars more than factories. And no one embodies that belief more than the officers of the Imperial Japanese Navy. They had studied America closely, too closely, and what they thought they saw convinced them the United States lacked the stomach for a long, brutal fight. A nation of comfort. Japanese intelligence reports painted a clear picture. America was rich. America was industrial. America was soft. A democracy obsessed with consumer goods, automobiles, refrigerators, radios, motion pictures. A nation where the average citizen had never known hunger or defeat. To Japanese admirals, men raised on Bushido, discipline, and sacrifice, this looked like weakness. They believed Americans would panic under pressure, fracture politically, and demand peace once casualties mounted. One Japanese naval officer reportedly summarized it bluntly: Americans value life too much to endure a long war. It wasn't arrogance alone, it was projection. Japan had fought wars where suffering was expected, even honored, where dying for the emperor was not tragedy, but duty. They assumed Americans thought differently, and that assumption shaped everything. The shadow of the Great War. There was precedent. World War I had shown how quickly public opinion could turn. Japanese observers watched the Western democracies bleed themselves white in the trenches. They noticed strikes, protests, political infighting. To them, democracies cracked under prolonged pain. Authoritarian systems endured. And America, divided, argumentative, slow to mobilize, seemed especially vulnerable. If struck hard enough, if humiliated badly enough, surely the American public would demand negotiations. That was the theory. The decisive battle doctrine. At the core of Japanese naval thinking lay a single elegant idea: Kantai Kessen, the decisive battle. The concept was simple: lure the U.S. Pacific Fleet westward, bleed it through submarine and air attacks, then destroy it in one climactic naval battle. After that, America would realize the cost was too high. Japan would negotiate from a position of strength. Pearl Harbor was never meant to win the war. It was meant to shock America into doubt. The irony: Yamamoto didn't believe it. And here's the quiet contradiction at the heart of it all. The man who planned Pearl Harbor, the man whose signature made it possible, didn't share the same confidence. Admiral Yamamoto had lived in America. He had studied at Harvard. He had traveled across the United States. He had seen the factories, the railroads, the endless resources. He once warned Japan's leadership, "I can run wild for 6 months. After that, I have no confidence." 6 months. That was his estimate before American industrial power overwhelmed Japan completely. But Yamamoto was a naval officer, not a politician, and Japan's leadership had already chosen war. So he did what duty demanded. He planned the most devastating opening strike possible. Why Pearl Harbor seemed like proof? In the days following the attack, reports flooded Tokyo. Battleships sunk, aircraft destroyed, America humiliated. To many Japanese admirals, this was confirmation. They believed the U.S. Pacific Fleet had been crippled beyond repair, that the American public, shocked and ashamed, would recoil. Instead, something else happened, but they didn't see it yet. A fatal misread. What Japanese intelligence failed to understand wasn't American industry or American technology. It was American psychology. They mistook comfort for weakness. They mistook restraint for fragility. And they completely misunderstood what happens when the United States feels attacked at home. Because as fire still burned in Pearl Harbor, as bodies were pulled from the water, America didn't fracture. It unified. A president's voice cuts through the smoke. December 8, 1941, Washington, D.C. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt sits before a microphone. His voice is steady, measured. A date which will live in infamy. There is no hesitation, no ambiguity, no talk of negotiation. Congress declares war almost unanimously. Recruitment offices overflow. Factories begin transforming overnight. And the sleeping giant, so carefully analyzed, so confidently dismissed, begins to wake up. Back in Tokyo, confidence remains. The early victories keep coming. Hong Kong, Singapore, the Philippines. Each conquest reinforces the belief: America is reeling. America is overstretched. America will tire. The admirals believe time is on their side. They believe morale, not production, will decide this war. And for a brief, dangerous moment, history seems to agree with them. But beneath the surface, something is already shifting. Because the United States is not trying to win quickly. It is preparing to win forever. And the first crack in Japan's confidence is closer than they realize. Rising from the Pacific, like a shadow they never planned to face.
The victories come fast, too fast. By early 1942, the Imperial Japanese Navy is riding a wave no strategist had ever truly dared to imagine. British fortresses fall, American garrisons surrender, maps are redrawn with confident strokes of ink. In Tokyo, situation boards glow with success. Southeast Asia collapses like a paper wall. Singapore, once called the Gibraltar of the East, falls in just 7 days. Over 80,000 British and Commonwealth troops march into captivity. Japanese officers watch in disbelief. If the British Empire can crumble this quickly, what chance does America really have? Victory as validation. Inside naval headquarters, the belief hardens. Pearl Harbor worked. Shock worked. Speed worked. And more importantly, psychology worked. Japanese admirals interpret every early success as proof of their original assumption, that Western powers lack the moral endurance for sustained war. One staff officer writes in his diary, "The enemy retreats everywhere. Their spirit is clearly broken. But retreat is not collapse, and delay is not surrender. The difference is subtle until it isn't." America's silence is misread. Across the Pacific, something unsettling is happening. America is quiet. No massive counterattack, no desperate naval showdown, no rash attempt to reclaim lost territory. To Japanese planners, this silence feels like fear. They assume Washington is paralyzed by shock, divided by debate, trapped by logistics. What they fail to see is that America is buying time, and time for an industrial power is a weapon. Factories replace fear. In Detroit, automobile plants shut down civilian production almost overnight. Assembly lines that once built sedans now churn out B-24 Liberators. In California, shipyards work around the clock, welders sleeping beside half-finished hulls. One ship every few days, then one a day, then faster. American workers don't talk about surrender. They talk about quotas and vengeance. A dangerous assumption about will. Japanese doctrine places supreme faith in seishin, spirit. They believe morale decides battles, and because they value endurance through suffering, they assume others will not. But American morale doesn't shatter under attack. It concentrates. The more casualties reported, the more determined the public becomes. This is something Japanese intelligence never truly measures. They track ships, they track aircraft, they track oil. They do not track anger. Yamamoto's clock is ticking. Admiral Yamamoto watches the situation with growing unease. The 6 months he warned about are passing quickly, and still no decisive battle. The U.S. Pacific Fleet refuses to sail west en masse. Instead, American carriers strike unexpectedly, small raids, pinpricks, psychological blows. Then, in April 1942, something happens that rattles Tokyo. The Doolittle Raid. 16 American bombers appear over Japan itself. Not enough to do real damage, enough to do something worse. They bomb Tokyo. Civilians see enemy aircraft overhead, sirens wail. The myth of invulnerability shatters. For Japanese admirals, the raid is militarily insignificant, but psychologically catastrophic. If America can reach Japan this early, what will it do later? Confidence begins to tighten into anxiety. The response is immediate. Yamamoto pushes for a decisive engagement now. He wants to draw American carriers into battle and destroy them completely. That battle will come, and Japanese admirals are confident they will win it, because after all, they still believe America lacks the will for sustained sacrifice. They still believe one crushing defeat will end the war. They are about to stake everything on that belief.
Midway approaches. Plans are finalized. The target, Midway Atoll, a trap designed to force the U.S. Navy into open combat. 4 Japanese fleet carriers, the pride of the Imperial Navy, steam eastward. The gamble is enormous, but the confidence remains, because Japanese leadership still believes this: America has not yet tasted real pain, and once it does, it will break. But the Americans are waiting, listening, decoding, and preparing to do something no one in Tokyo thinks possible: to take Japan's momentum and snap it in a single morning.
June 4th, 1942. 04:30 a.m. North Pacific Ocean, 300 miles northwest of Midway Atoll. The sea is calm again. Too calm. On the flight deck of the Japanese carrier Akagi, deck crews move with ritual precision. Engines cough to life, propellers blur, the smell of aviation fuel mixes with salt air. Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, commander of the carrier strike force, stands rigid on the bridge. His face is unreadable, but his mind is full. This is supposed to be the decisive battle, the one that finally proves Japan's assumptions correct. Everything according to plan. At first, it unfolds perfectly. Japanese aircraft strike Midway, pounding airfields and installations. Damage reports are favorable. Nagumo prepares the second strike. American carriers, according to Japanese intelligence, are nowhere nearby. The trap is working. But then, a message arrives. Midway is not neutralized. Another strike is required. Nagumo hesitates, and in that hesitation, the first thread of confidence begins to unravel. A sky full of confusion. Orders are reversed, bombs swapped for torpedoes, torpedoes swapped for bombs, aircraft clutter hangar decks, fuel lines snake across the floor, ordnance lies exposed. It is a temporary vulnerability, a dangerous one, and at that exact moment, American planes arrive. The attacks that should have worked. First come the torpedo squadrons, low, slow, brave. Torpedo Squadron 8, flying obsolete TBD Devastators, charges straight into a wall of fire. One by one, they are shot down. Men burn, planes shatter, parachutes never open. Not a single torpedo hits. Japanese pilots watch, impressed. This is what they expected. American courage without coordination, sacrifice without strategy. The belief holds. For a few more minutes. 6 minutes that changed the war. High above, unseen, American dive bombers circle, lost, low on fuel, unsure of the enemy's location. Then, fate intervenes. A Japanese destroyer, racing to rejoin the fleet after chasing a submarine, leads them straight to the carriers. At 10:20 a.m., the sky opens. Bombs fall almost vertically. The Akagi is hit first, then Kaga, then Soryu. Fuel ignites, ordnance detonates, hangar decks become infernos, men run, then vanish. Steel melts. In less than 6 minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 fleet carriers are fatally wounded. Confidence doesn't fade, it dies. The unthinkable. On the bridge of the Akagi, officers stare in silence. This wasn't supposed to happen. This couldn't happen. The Americans weren't supposed to coordinate like this. They weren't supposed to endure losses like that and still strike back. They weren't supposed to be this adaptable. This wasn't a broken enemy. This was a learning one. The 4th carrier. The Hiryu fights on. Her aircraft strike back, crippling the USS Yorktown. For a moment, hope flickers, but by afternoon, American dive bombers find her too. She burns through the night.
By morning, she is gone. 4 carriers, hundreds of veteran pilots, years of irreplaceable experience. Lost. What Midway really destroyed. Midway doesn't just sink ships, it shatters assumptions. Japanese naval doctrine, built around decisive battle and psychological collapse, stands exposed. America didn't break, it absorbed the blow, adjusted, and counterpunched with terrifying efficiency. For the first time, Japanese admirals are forced to confront a reality they never truly prepared for. They are fighting a war of attrition, and they are losing it. The silence after shock. In Tokyo, the news is slow to arrive. When it does, it is carefully worded. Losses are minimized, truth is delayed. But among senior naval leadership, the meaning is clear. The margin for error is gone, and the enemy they thought would quit is only getting stronger. A question no one wants to ask. If America didn't break after Pearl Harbor, if it didn't break after early defeats, if it didn't break after losing entire squadrons at Midway, then what will break it? No one has an answer. And worse, no one can afford to ask out loud, because from this point forward, every month makes the imbalance worse. More American ships, more planes, more pilots, more pressure. The belief that morale alone could win the war is gone, but the war itself is only halfway begun. And now, Japan must fight it, without the illusion that once made victory seem inevitable.
The realization does not arrive all at once. It seeps in, quietly, painfully. By late 1942, Japanese naval officers begin to sense a pattern they can no longer dismiss as coincidence or bad luck. Every time the Americans lose, they come back stronger. Guadalcanal, where willpower is tested. August 7, 1942. The Solomon Islands. American Marines storm ashore on Guadalcanal, hacking through jungle and rain to seize a half-finished airstrip. To Japanese command, this is supposed to be impossible. The Americans are still meant to be rebuilding, still meant to be hesitant, still meant to avoid extended ground combat in the Pacific. Instead, they are digging in, fighting, dying, and refusing to leave. Night battles and broken assumptions. The Imperial Japanese Navy still dominates night combat. Their cruisers and destroyers strike hard in the dark waters around the island. American ships are sunk, crews are lost. By doctrine, by experience, by tradition, Japan should prevail. But each victory feels incomplete because the Americans keep landing more men, more supplies, more aircraft. The battles never end. They reset. Attrition. The war Japan never planned for. Guadalcanal becomes something Japanese strategists never intended to fight, a war of exhaustion. Every transport sunk hurts, every pilot lost matters. Japan cannot replace skilled airmen fast enough. Training pipelines are thin, fuel is precious. America's are not. The imbalance grows with each month. The American way of war reveals itself. Japanese admirals had expected the U.S. Navy to seek honor in decisive engagement. Instead, America fights methodically. They rotate units, they learn from mistakes, they upgrade radar, they coordinate air, sea, and logistics into a machine that grinds forward regardless of loss. It is not emotional, it is relentless. Morale versus momentum. Japan still believes in spirit, but spirit cannot escort convoys, it cannot repair hulls, it cannot replace engines. America's morale doesn't depend on victory every week, it depends on belief in eventual success, and that belief is fed constantly by factories, by training camps, by a government that commits fully to total war. the weight of numbers. By 1943, the math becomes terrifying. American shipyards launch vessels faster than Japan can sink them. Carriers appear in pairs, then groups, then fleets. Where Japan once counted ships individually, America now counts them by production schedules. A quiet shift in Japanese thought. Privately, some admirals begin to admit the unthinkable. They were wrong about America, wrong about morale, wrong about endurance. But publicly, nothing changes. The war must continue, because to stop would mean admitting that Pearl Harbor, meant to break America, had done the opposite. The enemy learns faster. American pilots become more skilled with each engagement. They survive mistakes. They pass lessons forward. Japanese pilots, once elite, are now being rushed into combat with minimal training. Quality gives way to necessity, and necessity favors the nation with deeper reserves. Confidence is replaced by hope. By now, no one in Tokyo believes America will break. The question is shifted. Not if Japan can win, but how long it can hold, and whether holding long enough might still produce a miracle, because miracles are all that remain. One final illusion. There is one last idea, one final gamble. If America cannot be broken, perhaps it can be bloodied so badly that it chooses restraint. The plan will require sacrifice on an unprecedented scale, a strategy that accepts death as a weapon, and it will mark the moment Japanese leadership fully abandons its original belief, replacing it with something far darker. The Pacific is about to enter its most brutal phase, and Japan's confidence will be replaced by desperation. By 1943, the Imperial Japanese Navy is no longer a machine of invincibility. It is a force stretched too thin, running on dwindling resources and the courage of men who cannot be replaced. The Pacific Ocean, once a stage for swift victories, becomes a graveyard of ships, planes, and pride. The Solomons become a test of survival. Guadalcanal drags on. Japanese soldiers and sailors fight in mud under tropical rain against an enemy who refuses to quit. Rations are meager, ammunition dwindles, disease kills silently. Yet Americans push relentlessly, island by island, never giving ground, learning with every skirmish, exploiting every mistake. Every Japanese assumption about how wars are won, the need for a single decisive blow, the idea that spirit alone can overcome material disadvantages, is systematically proven false. The fatal misjudgment, underestimating industry. While Japanese admirals gamble on morale and the chance of a decisive victory, America's factories hum day and night. Ships leave docks before old ones sink. Planes are mass-produced. Weapons are improved. Men are trained in weeks, not months. Japanese intelligence never fully grasps the scale of what they face, a nation that can outlast attrition indefinitely. The Battle of the Philippine Sea, the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. June 19th to 20th, 1944. The Japanese fleet sails once more to challenge the Americans. Confidence is still there, but now tinged with desperation. The Americans anticipate every move. Radar-guided fighter planes dominate the sky. Japanese pilots, many untested, fly straight into the teeth of overwhelming force. Hundreds of planes are destroyed in a single day. The spirit of the warrior is no match for the weight of industrial warfare. The collapse of confidence. By this point, Japanese admirals understand something they refused to believe in 1941. America does not break. It adapts, it replenishes, and strikes again and again.
Where once they imagined the U.S. public as fragile, they now confront a relentless war machine fueled by anger, resilience, and boundless production. Confidence, which was their greatest asset at Pearl Harbor, had become their greatest liability. Yamamoto's ghost. Admiral Yamamoto had warned it all along. He foresaw the danger of awakening a nation capable of staggering industrial output and inexhaustible manpower. His famous remark echoes through history. "In the first 6 months, we can run wild, but after that, there is no certainty." Pearl Harbor was a brilliant opening. Midway was a devastating counter. Guadalcanal was the first real shock. The Marianas sealed the pattern. Yamamoto had been right. The lesson that would cost Japan everything. The Japanese admiral's initial belief that America would break was never about ships, planes, or bombs. It was about human psychology, and they were catastrophically wrong. America did not fracture under humiliation. It did not falter under loss. It did not tire in the face of suffering. Instead, it learned, it adapted, it outproduced, it outlasted. What Japanese planners thought would be a war of short, decisive shocks became a grinding, inexorable war of attrition, a question that haunted the empire. By late 1944, Japanese commanders face a brutal question. If the giant they assumed would crumble refuses to fall, then how can they survive? The answer is no longer in strategy or tactics. It lies only in desperation. Battles fought with dwindling resources, with men pushed past exhaustion, with hope is the only weapon left. And yet, even in desperation, America does not break. It never had. The final irony. The very audacity Japanese admirals believed would crush America, Pearl Harbor, Midway, early conquests, only awakened it. Their confidence, once unshakable, became a mirror showing the immovable resolve of their enemy. And in that reflection lies the central tragedy of Japan's Pacific campaign. They fought not a fragile giant, but a colossus that learned, adapted, and endured. The war they imagined would be quick and decisive stretched into years of attrition they were unprepared to survive. And every miscalculation from 1941 onward traced back to a single fatal assumption: America would break.